Welcome, friends. Welcome to Couples Emporium. This is a place, a platform where relationship science meets biblical principles, and we tackle issues that couples, face in common. We're your hosts. This is Sandy, my wife, and I am Lincoln. And today we have got a good one for you. And by that, our topic of discussion is why do spouses cheat? Why do people cheat in their marriage? Anything you want to say, Shannon, before we get started?
That is a spicy topic. But before we delve into this is episode 11. I just wanted to again thank the Cherries for doing that wonderful and insightful interview in episode 10. We've been getting a lot of good comments, good feedback in regards to that last episode. That was our very first couples interview, and was such a tremendous blessing that they took the time out to share, in
Amen.
regards to their marriage. So we're gonna dive into today's episode, episode 11. Again, Lincoln said the topic is why do spouses cheat in their marriage?
And, we're going to do something a little different today. So, normally we break out the biblical principles to address, the situation. And we also look at the relationship science as well. But what we decided to do was and before we go into the relationship science and the biblical principles, I will present some thoughts that I have or reasons why people may cheat in their marriages. And I'm going to give it from, I guess, maybe from a male standpoint, so to speak, at least what I was thinking. And I started off with five, and Sandy also will share hers. So, although I'm saying this from a male perspective, it's just I'm thinking how my male brain works or how a male might think. Uh, I want to start off by saying I had a conversation with a friend this weekend, and one of the things we talked about were the fact that how men in general are able to just settle down and get married, picking the right person. And I shared with this individual that I don't believe in those things like a soulmate, because the idea of a soulmate is to say that there's only one person in this universe that
Just
was made
just
just
for
for me.
you, yeah.
And what if we're on different continents and neither one of us ever traveled to the other's continent? That means we'll never meet. And I guess that means we'll just mess up other people's lives. So I don't subscribe to that idea. So I told him pretty much that most women are attractive or beautiful, and it comes down to making a decision, learning about someone. I said what I like to do is to observe the person for a while without them actually knowing that I would be interested. Observe the person, and there's got to be some things that you're looking for. And with that, I guess you do use it as a checklist. And you observe the person and looking for certain character traits. And once you feel that those character traits are there, are present, then you want to make it known. However, since I don't believe in dating, which is a a topic for another discussion, because I say something like that and people are like, huh? Think of it as being strange. But I don't believe in wasting someone's time, and the only reason that people should court or even date, as people often use that word, is because they're interested in getting married. If you're not interested in getting married, then my take on it is just leave that individual alone. Don't waste their time. They're not there for you to test drive. They're not there for you to waste their time and their resources. Just should just forget about it. Sadie, any
Yeah,
comment on?
I agree. Just want to clarify a little bit. We offer, this podcast is to gear to couples, and when we say couples, we're talking someone that's dating. Lincoln and I like to use dating as to say that they're in a courtship relationship where the intention is that I am going to eventually marry this person. Now, we're not saying you meet someone and then a month later you're going to go get married.
Why not?
We're
Hey, I can do it in 2 weeks, man. I can sum it up.
we're not saying that, but I just want to bring a little clarity in regards to when we say dating, we're talking about two individuals that are in a courtship relationship where the intentionality is getting married. And then we also do this podcast also to those that are engaged and couples that have been married for a while and couples that are recently married and couples that are kind of like in between. Lincoln and I were going into our ninth year, so I would say we're kind of like maybe in between. We're in
We
between.
haven't arrived.
Well, no one has arrived, but I mean, people that have been married, like the Cherries, they've been married for a while. So yes, they do have a lot of wisdom to bring to the table, and so do we, because we don't claim to know it all, but I've learned a lot since we've been doing this podcast, and I'm sure Lincoln can say the same too.
Yeah.
So our goal is to help people that are in relationships, and by relationships we mean that again you're courting, you're engaged, and you are officially married.
Yeah, we sorry to interrupt you. We believe that everyone, through their experiences, will often learn things that they can share
Hmm.
that others can glean from. A particular strategy of dealing with something within their marriage that someone else can benefit from.
Yeah.
So we look forward to learning those things, not just for ourselves, but to share with anyone around the world who wants their particular relationship to thrive. So that's one of our biggest motivation for doing this.
Yep. And we also want to extend an invitation to couples out there. Doesn't matter where on this beautiful planet you are. We would like to do an interview with you because Lincoln and I, we believe in the power of what a healthy relationship can be, can look like, and what it can do for other people because we are living in precarious times right now where relationships are not taken as seriously as it should be. I was recently seeing an article, I think it was in New York Times, and it was saying how marriage is actually declining. And I was like, wow, that is like really and it's not because I don't believe it's because that people don't desire to be married. I think because some people honestly are now kind of like afraid. They're hesitant into going because marriage is not easy. I often say, marriage is not for the faint of heart. It's something that you have to work at. You think about two people coming from different walks of life, different, areas, different beliefs, different philosophies. They were raised differently because you can have two people born and raised in the same culture, and their look at marriage is different, totally different. The way they see money is different. The way they see family is different. So marriage does take a lot of work, and that's what the contribution that Lincoln and I want to offer in regards to relationship. And we're extending this invitation. You can reach out to us through the podcast on YouTube. You can reach out to us to let us know, hey Sandy, hey Lincoln, I'd like to do an interview. You know, my wife and I would like to share our experience, the wisdom that we have attained so far being married, or we're recently engaged and we want to talk a little bit more about, you know, before we got engaged, what our courtship
Experience.
dating experience was like. And for the person that may have got like very recently married, we'd love to hear from you. So just reach out to us, DM us, whether it's through the Substack platform, the Apple Podcast platform, the Spotify platform, or the YouTube platform. Just reach out to us and say, you know, we'd love to do an interview, you know, with the Johnsons.
I describe marriage as the most challenging of all relationships, all human relationships. However, it is the most rewarding.
Rewarding, yes, it is.
And and I think that sums it up best. And I don't know the reasons why there's such a decline. I'm just thinking that people just sometimes don't want to be bothered to do the hard work. Because as Sandy
Yeah,
said,
it's investment.
it
Yeah.
is challenging, it is hard work, but it is worthwhile work to do to be able to get two people from two different backgrounds,
Yeah.
sometimes two different cultures,
Yep.
uh, two different
Ethnicities.
ethnicities,
Yep.
family,
Makeup, family structure.
yeah, all that
Different.
stuff,
Yep.
and family values to come together and say, no, this is the way that we're going to do it for
Yeah.
our family, so that is a challenge. So let's get into it.
Yes.
So I'm going to just read off my five, and then I'll let Sandy read off her five, and then we'll sort of like break down, what it is that we mean or why came up with those thoughts. So my first one is that spouses cheat in their marriage, possibly because of the obvious sinful nature. Bible says that we're born in sin and shapen by it. And second is unmet desires that couples might have, and that may cause them to go outside a relationship. And breakdown in communication. And although we're not looking at the relationship science tonight, the research or biblical principles, I'm almost certain that one is in there. And cultural or societal practice, people might feel, especially from a male standpoint, that hey, this is what other male in my society or in my culture, it's what we do. So, it's kind of like the norm and the women accept it. So that's why I do it. And the fifth one might surprise you, getting back at the other spouse.
That's interesting. So you're going to be coming from a male perspective.
I guess, yeah, I guess so. With my male brain.
Well, for me, well, since Lincoln is doing a male perspective, obviously I'm doing a female perspective. And that's why I put emotional needs are not met. And that's a biggie for us women. I see that countless and countless of times, especially on Instagram, where, and I commend these men that I see often comes on as husbands, they fiancés, they come on and they're talking about, what as men what they can do to better their relationship with their fiance or with their wives. And I also, my point number two is disconnection, and point number three is unhealthy patterns and practices such as contempt. And number four may come across as a little bit petty, but I've had several people that have mentioned that to me. So I do want to talk about it. Lincoln and I were going to talk about it, and is personal responsibilities such as not taking care of oneself. And number five is I said that there are deeper issues that often exist beneath material, meaning that there is often a root cause that's usually not addressed, that would make someone step out of their
Now you
marriage.
sound like the psychologist saying. All right,
Yeah.
before we go any further,
Mm.
if you're joining us for the first time or you're a repeat visitor, we thank you for your support.
Yes, yes.
But if you have not yet subscribed, please do so. We are trying to build and grow this channel
Mm.
because we think that it's beneficial to couples, not just here in the United States, but around the world.
Yes.
So we want to get the word out and we want you to like as well as share it with as many
Mm.
couples that you know because we always feel like there's something that's discussed that you can benefit from. And don't forget the notification bell so that whenever we upload a video, you'll be notified. And I just want to say that, since we began doing this, and we had actually started this thing, I think it was like 5 years ago,
Yeah, about
and
that.
we used to do it more locally and just with a few friends of ours, and we were doing it over Zoom. And then when we thought about it, we said, you know what, we need to get this information out to more people. And this is before we knew how to even do a podcast. But
Right.
we wanted to be more of a help
Mm.
to others and also to learn as well because everyone go through that initial struggle when you first get married and you're learning how to just not just exist but thrive. And it's easy to just in the beginning when you start to go through the changes to start to this is as much as far as I'll go, and you start to learn some things about yourself, and as well as while you learn some things about your spouse, and just understand that the person you marry, the person that you marry, the person you're about to marry, is going to go through changes. I'm going to say it again. They're going to go through changes,
Mm.
not just physical changes, but other changes as well. Hopefully, not change in character so much, but changes in the way even how they view the world, how
Mm.
they think about many of the things like money and just stuff. So there's so much work that is involved
Yeah.
to make marriages work. And it's so important that couples communicate because if you're just uh, saying things like, we'll just agree to disagree, and you're avoiding the issues, then eventually those issues become big deals. So let me jump into my first one.
Mm.
So I said that sinful nature is the reason why, men will cheat because men might see it as almost like a rite of passage that, well, all men cheat in my society, or it's
Mm.
just a thing that men do. And, well, it is a sinful nature for us to be sinful, but we don't have to behave like animals. And I even think even with animals, a lot of them you will see that there's just one partner for life. So to just say that it's sinful nature, it's kind of like a cop out, just like an excuse. But it is true that sinners sin, and to
Yeah.
just think that you have no control over your behavior or you cannot correct it, or do course correction you before you
Mm.
get married. So you know what? I am going to change some things about myself, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to do that because I often remember a conversation I had with a spiritual mentor where he says, men thinks that it's different as they go from women to women,
Mm.
but the truth is, regardless of how tall they are, how short they are. So, regardless of their vertical height or their horizontal size and their complexion and their ethnicity and the language they speak, it's all the same thing because it's nerve endings with nerve endings. So, they just need to just get over that thinking, that
Mm.
form of thinking, to understand that just commit to a person that possesses some traits and qualities that you like, and then you get married to that person and you can have a really good, and thriving relationship with them. Same.
I want to touch on emotional needs that are not met. That was point number one for me. And I wrote in my notes, it says, from a woman perspective, emotional connection often matters deeply in marriage. And I wrote, when a wife feels unseen, unheard, unappreciated, or emotionally neglected over time, it can create a deep sense of loneliness, even while still being married. And that is so true. Early in our marriage, and I've said this in previous episodes, there was a time that I do feel lonely because, we have to be intentional in our marriages. We have
Mm-hmm.
to realize that we cannot afford to take each other for granted. And while we are always in the phase, and I don't believe it should ever die out or ever change. We're still, as husband and wives, we're still in the perpetual process of discovering each other and getting to know about each other. So we have to be mindful and not to be taken off guard, to take each other for granted. And
Mm-hmm.
most wives and most women that I've talked to in general, there's nothing like feeling appreciated. And I would often say to Lincoln, for me, it's the little things. It's the texts that he will send throughout the day, calling me sweetums, hey sweetums, how's your day how's your day going? It's not I'm not I like flowers. My favorite flower is a tulip, and tulips are very expensive. And with all the tariff stuff that's going on right now, I mean,
Style.
it'd be great if Lincoln was to bring me tulips, you know, let's say, once a month. But it would be wonderful, would be really nice. But just to say a kind word, or to say, Sandy, I saw that you cooked dinner. As soon as I walk in, I saw that you started dinner. I'll run the dishwasher, or I'll start the laundry. It's the little things, as wives and as fiancés, and someone that's in a relationship where, the intention is to get married. As women, we want to feel appreciated. We don't want to get to a point where you're in a relationship and you feel lonely, because it's not a good feeling. And I'm saying this to say that, it does not excuse betrayal. I'm not saying that, as a woman, I feel lonely, so I'm going to step outside of my marriage. I'm not saying it justifies that, but we do have to be very, very mindful that we, as we go along in our relationship with each other, we talk. And, Lincoln is a strong proponent for, talking and communicating. And, sometimes he will often say, let's talk, I want to talk. And sometimes I'm just not in the mood. When a woman is going through different changes, whether it's menopause, perimenopause, or on our period, or PMS, or pregnant, as women, again, I'm not saying this as an excuse. There's just times you're just not really in the mood to really talk. You had a long day at work. You have responsibilities, different obligations. Again, I'm not saying this is an excuse and not to sit down, but I think it's better when you're both in the frame of mind to sit down and to say, let's talk. And it's important to set a time aside and say, what, I realize today may not be a good day for us to talk. Let's figure out something. Maybe we can do something before the week is over. I often say, you can use even your date night. Plan ahead and say, we're going to use our date night to take, at least, like, let's say, 20 minutes to talk about what's going on, with each other. So emotional, emotional needs, when they're not met, as a wife, that can really, I believe that is something that can, it's not an excuse to,
Mm-hmm.
but it can contribute to her stepping outside of a marriage.
I do like the fact that you mentioned, scheduling, because In the beginning when you were saying that couples will continue to discover and learn about each other, I think that's important. The
Mm-hmm.
thought that actually came to me
Mm.
is that we talk about the honeymoon phase,
Yeah.
and I challenge those that are actually listening to understand that what we call the honeymoon phase, we should actually call it the initial phase, because
Mm.
initial in the sense that you're truly going to start learning about each other, not what you saw during courtship. A lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to say this
Yeah.
before, that
Yeah.
what we see in courtship may show some willingness of each of the spouses, things that they're willing to do to make the relationship happen, to bring it to that point where people desire to be married and commit, to being married. However, they should remember that's the beginning and not the destination. So, since it's the beginning,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
then they should understand that the pursuit begins now.
Yeah.
So, when you look at it from the standpoint that the pursuit begins now, then you understand that this idea of a honeymoon is that it's perpetual.
Mm-hmm.
And for it to be perpetual, then it's going to take work on both sides.
Mm.
Both spouses going to have to put the time in. It cannot be one sided, because if it's one sided, and I'm not saying, when I say one sided, I'm not saying they're both doing 50-50, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think anything is ever 50
No.
50,
Right.
because we're complementary to each other.
Right. Yeah.
We often says, my better half. Now we're complementary, not necessarily opposites. So the fact that we're complementary, then wherever the one might lack, and then that's where we try and fill the gap.
Mm.
So we work together, and the way that works is through constant and consistent communication. I think even if it's just 15 minutes, and like Sandy said, that may not necessarily happen every day, and it makes me thinking about our relationship with the Lord. We can be so busy that uh, we may not just take any set time to talk to the Lord on a particular day, but we just shouldn't go days without building our relationship with Him. And I just want to point out to those that are listening that although we use biblical principles and relationship science, I don't want you to think that this is just for people from a Christian persuasion, because as couples, there's so many things that we face and deal with in common.
Mm.
And when Sandy talked about that invite, we also talk about couples that don't believe the way that we do,
Yeah.
because we don't
Absolutely.
see marriage as a spiritual thing.
Yes.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
And marriage existed way before Christianity. So that's one of the reasons why we don't see it and will never see it as a spiritual thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. Um, you mentioned about being pursued. That's one of the things that us women, we want to feel chosen. We want to feel be pursued, safe, and emotional connection is important.
prioritize.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not just a physical presence of our husbands in the home, but we also want to and we crave that connection where you can look at your husband and say, he gets me. He gets me. And again, getting someone is not something that it's I see it
Overnight.
yeah, I see it as a marathon, not as a sprint, because while we're discovering each other and getting to know about each
Mm-hmm.
other, there's times in the marriage, especially if you've been married for, a little while, you can actually so I that was my experience with Lincoln. When we were courting, that I remember saying to my sister, he gets me, understands what I'm saying. So we don't have to wait until we're married to our spouses to start to get to understand the person and to discover the person. So that's important. And My second point was disconnection. And I said, disconnection usually does not happen all at once, never does, just as though connection doesn't happen
Hmm.
instantly. You know, sometimes some folks they mix up attraction with connection because they had that bond with that person instantly. They're like, oh wow, not realizing that it's attraction, because attraction can be like very, very swift. You see someone, you're like, yeah. And you automatically think, oh, I'm connected to them. And you just met them a week ago. I just feel this connection.
It's
And, and,
possible.
and I mean, yes, you can feel like, like we're kindred spirit, because that's what I experienced with Lincoln, when we were connected. But, we have to be mindful because sometimes emotions can come into play, especially for us as women. And we think right away, like, this is the one. We have to get to know the person and allow things to flow, and if it's meant to be, it will happen. So I said, it this connection usually does not happen all at once. It often grows quietly through busy schedules, unresolved hurt, lack of quality time, poor communication, or feeling emotionally dismissed. And from a woman's perspective, this connection can feel like the relationship is no longer a place of comfort, friendship, or partnership. And once that distance settles in, being vulnerable in the marriage weakens, and outside attention can begin to feel more powerful than it should. And as women, we need to be mindful, because and that's why it's important to talk to our spouse. Yes, your husband may not be creating an atmosphere where you feel that connection, where you feel like you can open up and share. And sometimes it may take even to send a text or to write and say, you know what, I'm not feeling connected to you. Sometimes we have to verbalize it, because, and again, I'm not excusing. Sometimes we just get so busy and so bombarded with things going on around us, that it's important. Sometimes you have to, like, be intentional and make the effort to say, you know what, I don't feel connected to you. Because if you don't, then that's when the loneliness start coming in, and next thing you know, a gentleman comes across and start complimenting you, and next thing you know, you're in an affair with this person.
So my second point was unmet desires, and I think when I envisioned this, I was really thinking more about unmet expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And although it captures desires as well, and in every marriage, there are things that are unmet often because it's just not communicated.
Hmm.
And my favorite word is osmosis, where we should never expect or anticipate our spouses to know what a particular expectation is or a desire is if it's not communicated. We're not going to know, and it's unfair to the other spouse to meet a need or to meet an expectation or desire if it's not communicated. It needs to be voiced. And it comes back to the point that how important it is for people to have daily communication. And even if it's a short one, because if you're not able to have, let's say, dinner together because of work schedules and
Right.
other responsibilities, then I get that it may not necessarily be the 15 minutes, but things that are pressing, and especially if it's really gnawing at you, it's bothering you, you need to say it. But when you do say it in a way that you're not attacking your spouse. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important to try. And it took a while for me, I realized as time went on to try to not to use the big N word, never. You never have time for me. You never seem to understand me.
never.
We have to be very, very mindful as wives not to use that N word, which is never. For me, number three on my point of from a woman's perspective is unhealthy patterns and practices such as contempt. And contempt is defined as it's destructive because
Amen.
it communicates being disgusted. It can breed disrespect and emotional rejection. It involves sarcasm, eye
Mm,
rolling, belittling our husbands or our fiance or our intended, harsh criticism, and constant negativity. It can damage, it can create damage. And we have to be mindful as women, you know, when our spouse, because it goes both way. Yes, I'm
mhm.
talking from a woman's perspective, but I've talked to many wives and many fiancés and young ladies, and I would say even, well, women in general, that they met someone. This gentleman is very serious about them, and they will say, I will share something with him, and he's coming across a little bit sarcastic, and we have to be mindful. And I would often say, did you say something to this gentleman that that I'm sharing something with you? I'm very serious, and he's like, his response is being negative or being sarcastic, because that can do really damage to a woman, because it attacks her feeling of being emotional safe with her husband or intended or fiance. Because once you start dishing out words of being sarcastic or showing contempt, it's going to erode at her emotion. Because as women, we're sitting down and thinking, oftentimes, what did I do? Did I do something? I don't deserve this. And next thing, you're spiraling and you're getting out of control. And again, someone comes along and is listening to you. And because for women, most of the time, an affair usually starts emotionally. This man is paying attention to you. It's like everything that your husband was saying before you got married, it's kind of that this man is saying the same thing. He's moving you in ways that your spouse used to move you, or your fiance or your intended used to say certain things. And we have to be like very, very mindful. It says here, I wrote down, when unhealthy patterns like contempt becomes normal, intimacy is replaced with defensiveness, resentment, and emotional withdrawal. A woman may begin to feel that the marriage is no longer feels tender, safe, or emotionally nourishing.
So my third one is similar to Sandy's contempt. Goes back to communication, breakdown in communication. When there's a breakdown in communication, I mean, Sandy stated all the issues, all the things that can go wrong, where spouses will not speak respectfully to each other. And when spouses stop speaking respectfully to each other, or they're just avoiding communicating,
Mm.
then it's SOS time. That's when you truly need to get yourself outside help. You need outside intervention
Yeah.
when the marriage is at the point where the two spouses are unable to talk to each other. So you need professional intervention at that moment.
Yeah. And for me, number four is personal responsibility, such as not taking care of oneself. And for women, this is very, very important. And it doesn't take a lot. I mean, I know there's tons of products that's out there. It doesn't take a lot to take care of yourself, as far as like your personal hygiene. That is so important, to because it does. There's nothing like when you take a relaxing bath, or even a shower. For those of us that may live in a situation where you're housing, where you don't have a tub, taking a shower, get to know yourself as women. That is so important. Get to know yourself, because for me, I've discovered something about myself, where the kind of scent that I used to like when I was much younger, like in my teenage years, is different from what I like now. But remember, like 13, 14, I liked the floral scent, and as I got older, I liked the more musky the more musky scent. Taking There's nothing wrong with buying yourself a nice cologne and lotion and do different things. It might be expensive, to go get your hair done. So treat yourself, once in a while, go get your hair done, go get your nails done. But personal hygiene is so important, um,
So,
working.
sorry to interrupt. So when you talk about personal hygiene, so grooming is involved
Yep,
in
grooming is
that. Okay,
involved. Yep,
thank you.
it's important. We as wives, we cannot ignore our own emotional health. Our own spiritual health, our physical well-being, our inner life. We need to do better. And there's a passage of scripture, I can't remember exactly where it's taken from, but it it's basically, and I'm summarizing it. It says that if we know better, we do better. And I'm actually thinking that that's probably might be a proverb too. That if you know better, you do better. And if you want to remain attractive, and this has nothing to do with weight, because as women, and especially as we get older, our body hormones are going to change. Different things are going on. Stress, taking care of children, taking care of other family members. Our jobs are stressful. We might be going back to school. That can be stressful. There's different things, and it's not so much about, I need to get back that high school weight, or I need to get back that high school figure. We have to be realistic. We're not going to look the way that we look when we were 16. That's not going to happen. And I've seen commercials out there. As a matter of fact, before we came on, Lincoln and I were watching a little telly, and we saw this Tai Chi ad on YouTube where it's basically presenting that you're going to look, it's not realistic. I'm not saying it's impossible, but every woman is different. I may take 4 weeks to lose 1 pound. I'm just saying that. And another woman may take 10 pounds
10
for
weeks.
10 weeks to
Oh,
lose a certain amount of weight. So we need to be gentle with ourselves as women, and we need to still remain attractive and beautiful. But it also starts with our inner self, because if you don't believe that you're beautiful, then you can find yourself that you may not be willing to take a compliment from your husband, or even from another person that is genuinely complimenting you. I'm not talking a man that's coming on and flirting with you. I'm not talking like that. But honestly, like, which is okay for someone of the opposite sex to compliment and say, hey, Sandy, that's a nice dress, or your hair. Oh, it looks like you got your hair done over the weekend, or you went to get a hair. It looks nice. There's nothing wrong with a gentleman complimenting you. I'm talking someone, because I remember years ago, a very, very wise woman said to me, back then I was still single, and she said, Sandy, she said that once you get married, don't be naive to think that you won't find someone of the opposite sex to be attractive than your husband, but it's how you go about going about doing it. And those were such wise words that this person said to me. So we need to take care of ourselves mentally as women. you know most of us, we have jobs where they offer insurance. Go get that counseling. There's not Getting counseling is not a sign of that you're broken, that you're weak, that you're mentally unstable. Not at all. We all can use something from someone that can see that, especially when they're professionally trained, that they see a different perspective to you. They can give you different coping strategies and different way on how to take care of yourself. So it's important that we take care of ourselves, body, mind, soul, and spirit. So what's your number four?
so my number four is cultural or societal practice,
Mm-hmm.
and I stated this because oftentimes it is the thing I think that most men will feel that, hey, everyone in society is behaving this way, and I am not going to be the outlier. I think it's the outlier,
Yeah.
to be committed and to be in a monogamous relationship, and I think it's one of those lies that men tell themselves
Yeah.
in particular, and they need to know that, hey, there are many. responsible men that make the right decision
Mm.
to stay in a committed relationship. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with race, ethnicity, or culture. It's just
Or
a,
even religion.
yeah, it's just a personal choice.
Yeah.
It's always been my choice. And even before I had any religious experience, that was my choice and my thought process
Mm.
from I was a kid and growing up. And there's one thing I used to always say. I used to always say that I am not going to have relationships because I do not want to deal with the temptation where I will take the risk and I'll have children and I'm not married,
Mm.
children out of wedlock. So that was kind of like one of those motivations for me. And yes, it meant that I'd be teased and, people will say things and people can be cruel and harsh, especially guys. But I didn't care because I didn't need uh, I didn't need a validation of guys to make me know that my
Mm.
choices for my own life are good.
Mm.
So these virtues that I had them because I wanted a particular kind of life.
Mm.
And it meant that it was going to shield me or protect me from certain hurts and pains and hardships that I didn't want to deal with. And I'm glad that that's the way my outlook was even back then,
Mm.
right?
For my number five, I wrote down there are deeper issues that often exist beneath betrayal, and it is so true. I do believe that everything often has a root cause. We see things on the surface and we make our assumptions and we make our statements and say, oh, well, maybe if he didn't do this, then she wouldn't have stepped outside of her marriage, and vice versa. Oh, maybe if he didn't do this. Oftentimes we have to look at that there is that something deeper is definitely going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote down here that betrayal is often the visible symptom of a deeper issues already presented underneath the surface. And those issues can include unresolved trauma, insecurity, attachment wounds, fear of intimacy, resentment,
Mm,
low self-esteem, low self-worth, poor boundaries, emotional immaturity, or long-standing relational fractures. And
mm-hmm.
I wrote down from a woman's perspective, it's important to ask not only what happened, but what was happening underneath the marriage long before the betrayal occurred.
Mm,
Understanding those deeper layers does not remove responsibility, but it can help couples face the truth more honestly. And I just want to, before Lincoln, dive into his um, point number five, I also want to say that if anyone out there that you may suspect that your spouse is cheating on you, I would suggest, especially right now, because I've seen lately on social media, there's a lot of, and I'm not just saying wise because I'm sure well, I haven't seen any news report of any wife killing her husband, but I've seen it recently, and it's very troubling.
yeah, a lot of
Yep, a
violence.
lot of domestic violence where husbands are killing their wives, and there's one that I forgot the name of it. It's a social media young lady. She was killed. They're saying now that it's possibly the gentleman that was shown interest in her, that he probably was the one that killed her. And we have to be mindful, if you sense, or you may even have evidence that your husband is cheating on you, go seek help. I would not suggest that you try to confront him. Go and get help. Don't try to figure things out. Go and get professional help. It is so important, that because I can only imagine the to discover something like that I think that's the most one of the most heartbreaking, devastating thing that a wife can discover or even suspect that her husband is stepping out outside of their marriage.
I don't think abuses should ever be tolerated in any relationship. That's something that should be addressed right away, and
Yeah.
especially when it comes to being, physical, where someone is just beating your brains in. That
Yeah.
that is never a display of love, and no one should ever look at it as such. You know, so any kind of abuse that's destroying the relationship and the integrity of the
Yeah.
relationship should just not be tolerated.
Because it's not just physical, you know.
Yeah.
Recently, there's a person that Lincoln and I, we're acquainted with, and he was saying on his TikTok post, and I saw it actually today, and I was like, wow, I never really thought about it. And he was saying how, he was saying something along the lines that there can be something such as financial infidelity. And I was like, wow,
Wow.
I need to look into that. And that's also, I would say, from the top of my head, that's a form, the beginning signs of communication.
Yeah.
When you are,
Secrets.
yeah, you're not discussing, and it can be very, very challenging not to, to sit down and to have a conversation in regards to financing. But I just wanted to mention that.
So my point number 5 is similar to Sandy's, where you're getting back at the other spouse, and if you find that you're in a situation or in a marriage where you've gotten to that point where it's like tit for tat, then obviously the couples are not working together or working to strengthen their relationship, working to build up their marriage and addressing the issues that may be at bay when they're thinking, well, I'm going to do this to get back at the other person.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't solve anything. Two wrongs doesn't
No,
make a
make it
right.
right. That's
And,
right.
and we know that usually they'll say in a marriage, if there's infidelity, such as person steps out of the marriage bed, in many cases the man is not going to try and save that relationship, and the women are more likely because to do so. But we don't ever want our relationships to get there, to get to that place, because for many marriages, it's a point of no return when it gets to that. So there's a lot, like Sandy said before, there's a lot that has transpired to get people
Yeah.
to get to that stage, that phase in their marriage where now they're just having relations outside of that covenant. So we hope that the things that we shared here today will cause you to come back and
Yeah.
listen in to hear what the research, the relationship science is saying. What biblical principles are there to provide some guidance and to shed some light. And even though we did these off the top of our heads, as I said, we wanted to do something a little different.
Yeah.
But we're hoping that we're able to keep your attention and that you will go ahead and subscribe, you'll go ahead and like and share, and let us know how the things we discuss, how it benefits you, and how it might impact your relationship. So we're just truly thrilled that you spend this time with us
Yes. Yeah.
on Couples Emporium. I am Lincoln, and this is Sandy,
Yes.
and we're just so blessed to have you spend this time with us. God bless you.
Have a wonderful week.